Hi everybody, my name is Jo and I'd like to read. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about the surprises and disappointments of my reading in 2022. I usually do some kind of video in this vein. Depending on what I read, it'll either be the best, the most surprising, or the most disappointing books. I generally don't do the worst books because if they're going to end up being the worst things that I read, I generally DNF them, and because I talk about my DNFs during the year, I don't tend to do a video where I talk about the books that I DNF. Let's start out with the spicy stuff, with the salty stuff. Let's go with the most disappointing books for 2022. My first disappointing book was Beartown by Frederick Buckman. I so wanted to love this book really hard. I thought Beartown, based on what I'd heard and what the people, at least that I'm exposed to, had said, I thought it was going to be a story about the effects of rape in a small town. And it kind of is to an extent, but I thought it was more going to be surrounding the rape itself and justice and small town gossip, but was more of a study of the sport, being hockey, and you know that from the back of the book that it's a hockey town, but I feel like it's more of a conversation about what happens when so much pressure is placed on certain individuals in town, kids and adults. That's what I feel like the conversation is more about, not about sexual assault. Putting so much pressure on this one aspect of your life that you must succeed to all else, and that is still a valuable lesson. If I'd heard what it was about, so like what the story was actually about, I maybe might not have picked it up because it wasn't what I thought, and so that made me a little bit disappointed. On the flip side though, I do think that even if it wasn't what you expected, sometimes the author can be so good and the story itself can be so good that it doesn't matter, but this wasn't the case for me. The second book that disappointed me this year was the monstrous graphic novel Volume 1 Awakening by Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda. This one wasn't bad. So again, I suppose most people understand the concept of disappointing, but I still feel like it is good to mention this as well, in that disappointing doesn't mean that the books were bad, it's just that they weren't as good as you were hoping they were going to be, or they weren't what you thought they were going to be about to a bad effect, not a good one, otherwise they wouldn't be disappointing. I found Awakening okay. It was interesting, it was confusing. I may continue it, I'm not sure, but it wasn't the amazing graphic novel that I was hoping it was going to be because so many people have hyped it up. Sorry, it's actually a comic, it's not a graphic novel, it's a comic. It wasn't the comic that I was hoping it was going to be. Maybe I will enjoy it more in the future, but it just wasn't what I thought. It wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be, at least to me. I think the themes and the art style and everything that it explores are good concepts, but for whatever reason it just didn't pull at my heartstrings in particular. At least at not that point and at that level for it to be as good as what I'd built it up in my head it was going to be. First good surprise was a non-fiction that I read, The Countries of the World in Minutes by Scott, what's his name? I always got to call him Scott, by Jacob F. Field. This one I was just surprised how much I loved it. It did take me a while to read because the concept that I as a reader can have a main book and a sub book just doesn't work, because for me I've got to be all in or nothing, because it is very, very rare that I can be super engaged in a sub book enough to want to be continually reading it when I'm not reading my main book but still enjoy it. It just doesn't work because I always feel a distance from the story when it's not my main thing. I don't like to read books at the same time, which is what I initially did with The Countries of the World in Minutes and why I thought that I was not enjoying it. But when I actually made it my main book, it was so good. And I was so stoked that one of the first non-fictions that I thought to buy for myself I enjoyed, and I'd always hoped that I would, but I wasn't sure, or I wasn't definite, or I wasn't even thinking likely. I was thinking a very small maybe, but I was probably thinking that I was going to have a long road to finding non-fictions that I enjoyed, and I expected to dislike a lot of them initially. So I was so excited that straight off the bat I enjoyed this book. So The Countries of the World in Minutes I don't think I've explained any of these books at all, because as on brand I talk about my feelings and not the book itself, and I'm trying to get better at that, but I'm not always good. But The Countries of the World in Minutes is a non-fiction, as I've said, but it basically has one-page spread per country, and it has a map of the country and a couple of the economic and population and etc. details, and then it has one page of it talks about its history and a bit about the country and things like that. And I just really enjoyed it. It was good. It was an eye-opener for the world. It was great foundation for me with geography, and it was told in a way that wasn't boring to have been so repetitive over lots of countries. Next surprise was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. Same sort of thing as The Countries of the World in Minutes. It was a genre, being classics and sci-fi, that I'm not used to being in, but I was quietly hopeful but not actually convinced that it was going to be a good book. But I had such a great time with Jurassic Park. Even all the sci-fi stuff wasn't that bad. I feel like it was told in an interesting way. I love the dinosaurs. As soon as all that action stuff happened, it was so good. I can't wait to read the next one. Jurassic Park is told in modern times, so there's all this technology, but it's not like it because it's a classic, so it's written a little bit ago, but it's still in modern times with technology. They have found a way to basically clone dinosaurs from a DNA strand that they find somewhere, and they create, this rich guy spends the money to create this Jurassic Park, so this theme park based on dinosaurs. But because it's been done before and it's quite scary, the rich guy invites a team of people that he has handpicked across the globe from what he determines is smart enough to help him test whether the facilities that he created are safe enough for the world. So he wants to know like the security and the dinosaur upkeep and safety and all that. It's not about the rich guy. It's actually about I think is he an archaeologist that studies dinosaur fossils, him and his assistant. I actually don't remember his name, but I remember Ellie Sattler's name. They're commissioned to go onto the island with him to check out this and see whether it's safe or not. But the rich guy himself is a little bit sort of snobby, and I know what I'm doing, and you know, this is just showing off to people before the public. He's not actually expecting there to be a lot of things wrong with the park, but then all hell breaks loose. So I had a really fantastic time with this novel. The final book that I want to talk about that surprised me is The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams. This one, I'm not surprised that it surprised me. because I was gifted it, so I didn't pick it myself, and even though I thought it was interesting, it was more of a cursory interesting. I tend to get more excited about fantasy books as opposed to historical fiction, which is what this book was, and because it was something that I hadn't picked for myself, I wasn't feeling all the hypes, but also it wasn't something that I saw when it was, because sometimes I can be feeling hyped about a book that someone's bought for me, but this one was not the case. I was so pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed this book and how much it kind of touched my reader's soul with words. Even though I knew it was about creating the Oxford Dictionary, the story itself I feel is different to the blurb that they present. I feel like they focus a lot more on the fact that the main character Esme stole a word and then this is her story, whereas to me that kind of painted a bit more of a rebel for the time, but a rebel for a good cause, but still someone who was operating a lot outside of the norms. And she kind of was, but in a more of a quiet way, and I actually really enjoyed that, because I feel like for me, I'm someone that really deeply believes in progress for society and the way that society controls the world and trying to progress it forward, but I do it in a quiet way because I'm not great at confrontation. I'm still working on that aspect of myself. And to be honest, I don't even know if I will be good at that. So I really loved that Esme was someone who believed in this stuff but went about it in a quiet way and almost just sort of lived her life by those values, even though that it doesn't seem like it's something that is going to push progress forward quickly. But really, we need a million ordinary people acting this way to then make the change everlasting. So even though protesting and activism and confrontation is so important, ordinary people are just living their lives quietly in that respect to do, because that's how generationally we then raise the next generation to be that way. Alrighty, that is it. Oh, do I tell you what The Handmaid's Tale? I also read that this year. Not on this list though. Do I tell you what the Dictionary of Lost Words is about? So it's about a girl who is raised in the Scriptorium, which is a building that was dedicated to helping create the first Oxford Dictionary. she's sort of raised in and amongst this area because her dad works there, and his wife died and he doesn't really have a babysitter or whatever the term was back in those days. So Esme comes to the place with them and she gets to learn and be involved in the word. She ends up working there eventually, but it's also got all these massive themes about women's rights and the war and all these different facets to it that I just honestly did not expect. So I'm gonna go now, pay more attention to my little bubby who's had enough, but I'm glad I got this video done even if I haven't been super motivated to film. I get motivated towards the end of the week, so I'm trying to get to the point where I'm pre-filming again, where I'm a week ahead, but it's just not happening. So anyways, I will talk to you guys in my next video. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and have a lovely afternoon. Bye!